Along the eastern shores of Maryland and Virginia is a 37-mile stretch of seashore known as Assateague Island, a barrier island that has become one of the most preserved natural ecosystems in the mid-Atlantic. Assateague Island is a rare getaway, largely untouched by human development. It's a place where feral horses roam freely, and its diverse habitats welcome hundreds of wildlife species across more than 41,000 acres of protected land and water. From sandy beaches and salt marshes to 3 distinct areas for visitors to explore: Assateague State Park, Assateague Island National Seashore, and the Chincoteague National Wildlife Refuge. Assateague Island offers a beautiful and truly unique experience right in the backyard of the beaches at Ocean City. I'm Jose, and I invite you on a tour to experience the beauty of Assateague Island.
Just across our bay here is Assateague Island. Assateague Island is a 37-mile-long barrier island. There are multiple distinct ecosystems out there. There are numerous really fascinating natural processes that take place on that island. There are even large numbers of recreational opportunities that draw many people to visit us. But does anyone know the number one reason people visit Assateague Island?
The horses.
Let's go on an adventure to one of the most truly unique destinations along the East Coast, Assateague Island, a barrier island that begins in the state of Maryland and ends in the state of Virginia. Once you cross into this coastal landscape, you'll encounter the one-of-a-kind inhabitants of the island, wild horses. The horses that roam Assateague Island are the main attractions when visitors discover this exotic location. The curiosity of having an island where horses roam free makes everyone stop by to capture a photo. The horses go about their day, unfazed by the extra attention, as if they're used to the curious sightseekers. And even as I snap a photo, a horse just walks right past me, without a care in the world. I give them their space as a guest in their territory, not trying to interrupt the flow of nature. From this location, the horses are enjoying the salt marsh grass, which is a main component of their diet. The low nutrient, salt-induced meal makes the horses have a high freshwater intake and makes it the main reason why the horses' physical features differ from traditional horses. Their stature is more like the size of a pony. Back at the entrance of Assateague Island, travelers begin the journey with the visitor center, a wonderful campus that makes a great first stop to get an overview of the island and learn about the rules when encountering the feral horses. The island is more than forests and salt marshes. It spans for 37 miles, with a coastline that measures the same length, stretching from the edges of Maryland down to Virginia. So let's get comfortable in the visitor center's rocking chairs and dig into the history of Assateague Island. Assateague Island State Park began as a vision shared by the National Park Service and Maryland State Planning Commission. Back in the 1930s, the National Park Service recommended protecting barrier islands and other coastal resources across America. While Assateague Island has been mostly preserved throughout its history, it's also faced developmental threats. In the late 1850s, small communities began to appear on the island. Many residents worked for the United States Life-Saving Service, the agency that would later become the U.S. Coast Guard. These early settlers lived as watermen and briefly established a village on the island, a community that lasted just over a century. Then came the major controversy of the 1950s and 60s when developmental plans began to take shape. A company called Ocean Beach Corporation sold hundreds of residential and commercial lots, aiming to transform Assateague into a beachfront destination mirroring nearby Ocean City. But a pushback from the Maryland residents and the raw force of nature would change that course. The Ash Wednesday storm of 1962 devastated the island. It wiped out many of the homes constructed by the watermen that had taken root, this event becoming a turning point. Congress acted to protect the island, preserving it for public and recreational use, creating Assateague Island State Park, and ensuring that landscape, wildlife, and the natural beauty be safeguarded for future generations. This is Assateague State Park, the first stop along our journey, where the incredible shoreline of the island greets us with laughter and joy from visitors enjoying the secluded retreat. The lifeguards look on, watching the many swimmers make the most of their summer getaway. Assateague Island State Park was established in 1956, thanks in part to the National Park Service, which tirelessly fought for the preservation of the island and for many of America's barrier reefs. Today, millions of visitors come to experience the untouched beauty of this mid-Atlantic escape. Here, surfers take to the waters, drawn by the less crowded beach and the great quality of waves that fuel the excitement of the sport. But our moment quickly pauses as the sun begins to fade and the sounds of jet engines piques everyone's interest as the Blue Angels make their way towards Ocean City. As I walk back onto the beach, a massive rain cloud slowly drifts in from the northern parts of Maryland, adding a challenging natural element to an environment where there are few places to seek shelter. This year has been one of the most erratic for the old line state. It began with severe drought in the early months, followed by an above-average rainy season in spring, where May alone saw double its usual rainfall. Then, summer came in two waves. Flash floods carried over from the wet spring and surged through July, only to be followed by abrupt dryness in the later days of the season. On Assateague, it's been a roller coaster for the wild animals, who have adapted with resilience to these dizzying conditions. Still, many visitors continue enjoying their excursions, rainfall and all. The surfers pause on their boards, studying the volume and force of the waves, while beachgoers carry on their day, blanketed by the light drizzle from the giant cloud above. Swimmers laugh as the stronger waves push them playfully back onto the shore. When Maryland opened the park to the public in 1965, it continued to expand through the following decade, adding bathhouses, concession stands, and parking areas. As time passed and visitors multiplied due to the growing influence of nearby Ocean City, the state added even more: campsites, a nature center, and a permanent ranger station. The wave of visitors has only grown, and today, Assateague welcomes over 3 million tourists annually, travelers who happily return year after year, knowing this island will continue to be preserved for future generations.
Humans have had a connection with horses for thousands of years. So we've used them for our work. We've used them for travel. We've used them for war. We have entire sports designed around horses. Horses were a huge part of our lives for a very long time. It makes sense that we would be interested in seeing them and interacting. The question, though, is why come all the way to Assateague Island to see a horse? Why not just go to a petting zoo or farm near home?
Because I want.
Yeah. We've got wild horses. Assateague Island gives us a unique opportunity to see wild horses in their natural habitat. They've had hundreds of years to make Assateague their home.
The origins of the National Seashore date back to 1965, but its culture and history extend far beyond its official establishment. As we drive along the island's main road, we encounter more horses, freely enjoying their midday feast. When crossing the Verrazano Bridge from mainland Maryland, we arrive at Stephen Decatur Memorial Road, the route that carries visitors from the state park to the National Seashore. At this point, the road becomes Bayberry Drive, which eventually ends in a sand trail about 1.5 miles in. The middle of the island offers limited access to visitors, as its natural barrier system protects both the environment and the wildlife. The 1933 Chesapeake and Potomac hurricane was recorded as one of the most devastating in the mid-Atlantic. Not only did the hurricane give life to a new landmass, it also produced the highest tides in the history of Washington, D.C. The hurricane caused over $40 million in damages, with the highest areas of devastation happening in Maryland and Virginia. For most of its history, Assateague Island was connected to Ocean City and the rest of Fenwick Island. Its identity as an independent island is less than a century old, a result of the Great Hurricane of 1933, which devastated the East Coast and carved a permanent inlet between Ocean City and Assateague. Exploring Assateague Island takes visitors on scenic dune trails. These sand dunes are formed from coastal winds, pushing beach sand inland. Over time, it takes shape as vegetation, trapping the sands to stabilize the landscape. On the island's western end, travelers encounter the fascinating marshlands. Here, on the marsh trails, a stunning walking bridge allows visitors to immerse themselves in nature, observing the beauty of the marshes and dune trails. The half-mile path makes for a rewarding hiking experience. For the indigenous tribes who once settled in the region, including the Nanaco and Assateague, the marshes were an ideal location for gathering food. They relied on freshwater marsh pockets for fishing, crabbing, oystering, and harvesting, passing these skills onto European settlers who in turn used the same methods to feed their livestock. Assateague Island National Seashore is another protected area on the island, but unlike the state park, it spans both Maryland and Virginia. Operated by the National Park Service, the National Seashore focuses primarily on conservation. In contrast, the northern section of the island, home to Assateague State Park, is managed by Maryland State Parks and is geared toward recreation. After agreeing to preserve Assateague Island as public land, the state of Maryland moved quickly following the Ash Wednesday storm. The state developed parts of the island for camping, swimming, and other beach-related activities. While both agencies share a common goal and work closely together, they have distinct missions. The state park emphasizes recreation and public enjoyment. The National Seashore focuses on ecological preservation, scientific research, and low-impact public access with minimal development. Together, they offer two unique ways to explore and experience this fascinating island. Storm clouds linger above the Atlantic, casting shadows across the beach. At the National Seashore, a light drizzle scatters the crowds, leaving behind only the sound of waves against the sand. While the shoreline looks similar to the state park, the experience feels different. The state park offers convenience, lifeguards, amenities, and families making the short trip from Delaware and Ocean City. By contrast, the National Seashore strips away the extras. It's quieter, wilder, and preserved, a place where nature takes center stage. To continue south, there's no road through the heart of the island. Instead, visitors must leave Assateague behind, looping more than 50 miles around to reach the section that borders Chincoteague Island. The drive itself becomes part of the journey, a reminder of the island's rugged isolation. And there, near the entrance, the wild horses appear. Scattered along the road, they graze and wander freely, a living reminder that we're only guests in their home. When the story of Assateague Island makes its way to Virginia, it brings in another agency with a different path to add to the island's history. The Chincoteague Native Americans resided on Chincoteague Bay, a submerged body of water that separates mainland Virginia from a distinct set of islands that became Chincoteague. The area of Chincoteague is the only way to get access to Assateague on the side of Virginia. The Assateague Native Americans, being closely related to the Chincoteague, learned from their culture and adopted maritime, forest, and trade practices. The Chincoteague used Assateague Island to graze livestock. Welcome to the state of Virginia and the southernmost reach of Assateague Island, a place only accessible by crossing more than 5 miles of open bay along Chincoteague Road before reaching Chincoteague Island. From there, another 1.5-mile bridge along Maddox Boulevard carries us across the water into Assateague itself. A breathtaking approach and a journey worth remembering. By the time we arrive, the warm summer day has cooled into a soft evening, the winds carrying with them the first hints of autumn. As the cold water rushes over my feet, burying them in the wet sand beneath each passing wave, I reflect on this fascinating journey. Assateague Island is truly a marvel of preserved land, tucked within one of the busiest regions in the United States. The wildlife refuge is among the most visited in the nation, welcoming over 1 million people each year. Yet its quiet landscapes, abundant wildlife, and untouched stretches of sand make it feel as though we've stepped onto a deserted island adrift in the Atlantic. This section of Assateague Island is taken care of by the Chincoteague National Wildlife Refuge, a 14,000-acre preserve managed by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. Its reach extends all the way to the farthest curve of the island, known as the Hook. As we make our way back, the Assateague Lighthouse comes into view. First constructed in 1833, this beacon warns soldiers of the dangerous shoals and shifting sandbars that make these waters notorious for shipwrecks. The current red and white tower, built in 1867, rose more than 100 feet taller than the original, casting its light farther out to sea and guiding generations of ocean travelers to safety. Assateague Island is truly a remarkable landscape, a place where the history alone is worth the admission. From its breathtaking beauty filled with a sense of zen, tranquility, and calm, to the wildlife that roams freely, creating a one-of-a-kind environment. This ecotouristic escape belongs on every nature lover's bucket list. It also represents a shared commitment between neighboring states, working together to preserve this natural treasure so that future generations can continue to bask in its beauty. I'm Jose, and I thank you for joining me on this tour of Assateague Island. Until next time.